I tend to do, guys, is use my finger to get it even along there. 32.5. 32.5. Okay. Now we're going to bring these guys together. So what I've got is I've got the mid-frame turned back over, okay? Here's our wire hole here, guys. So this is the top of our mid-frame where our uni-joint motor mount sits on the top. Our plate that we've just measured to the midway point, which I've just rubbed off, which is a bit annoying. I'm just going to mark this again on the top. There we go. We're going to place this plate, get the right plate, quack. We're going to, oh, there I go again. It's that, I'm telling you, it's that falafel lunch that I had. We're going to line them up like so, okay? And this will be flush to the top of our mid-frame. And we're going to tack this in, all right? That's what we're going to do. So let's do that now. Before I literally pull the trigger on my MIG gun, I'm just going to bring you to light, guys, with some magnets that you will need to get hold of. This was also included in the estimate for the budget. Guys, you need to get some angle finding magnetic angle finders, all right? Large, small. Now these are a bit of a luxury, all right, but these are very, very handy. These can do all types of odd angles to hold your metal in place when you weld, and this is a classic example of a piece on the end of something like this. It's very hard to get a clamp on it, and with the right magnet you can make this work, okay? It's not going to be as strong as a clamp, but it's going to allow you to at least get it into position to tack it, and you'll do a very light tack so it doesn't move out too much, so then you can get the other tacks on and then you can do your welds. Now for this particular tricky one, right, I'm going to use this guy here, right? This is how it's going to work. I'll keep that off the end slightly so I can see my mark. And I can actually look through the little hole in the top of the magnet here to make sure my marks are aligned. Right, I can get that flush. I can get my square on this. That's it. And get that squared, and that will hold that in place when I just tack the top very carefully, okay? And just double check the alignment. Of course, these have got a hole in the top of them. Like this, you can look through, okay? So I can look through, and they are out of alignment just a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to tap that back. That's it. I'll just put these back on the magnetic board. But you need magnets like this, guys, to help you get metal into place. Now, when you come to building your top frame, those 90-degree angle finder magnets are going to be invaluable for getting your frame squared, all right, and held while you tack it. A combination of those 90-degree angle finder magnets, the large ones, and clamps will help you get all of your frame aligned. Rightio. So I'm just going to double check that now that I've moved that back in, that we're still nice and straight. And we are. One more check. Yep, beautiful. Rightio. So what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to roll my clamp into that hole, all right? And this is going to become the place for my earth clamp. Otherwise, I won't be able to clamp anything because my mid-frame is still in primer mostly. And I can't put my clamp on this, it'll put it all out. I'm just going to check this one more time, all right? And guys, please do this all the time. Just keep checking stuff. There's nothing worse than getting stuff what you think is lined up, but then it's not. It's really frustrating. Because then you've just, done it all, got it into what you thought was aligned. Very fine adjustments. been very stubborn this way. There we go. That's it. So it's going to take time to do that stuff. Be patient, get it lined up, and it's going to be a much better result. Now, of course, this is not clamped on the bottom, guys. When I put heat on this, this is going to lift out. So it's going to be a really small tack, just enough to hold it so I can turn the mid frame over and tack the underside so that it doesn't warp. All right, let's see what happens when I just do a very small tack. Let's see if I can get it tacked without it moving out too far. Even if it moves out a little bit, because they're going to be very fine, quick tacks, I should be able to push it back flat on the other side. Super light tacks, and yep, it has kinked out a little bit. But that is to be 100% expected. So now I can take that guy off and get him out of the way. Because that was a very light tack, okay, when I actually put a heavy tack on the other side, it should pull this back in. You can see the gap there, guys, where that's been pulled out by the heat, and this is what I'm talking about when you weld. All right, if you don't have things clamped, that's exactly what will happen, even with a very light tack like that. So I'm basically going to physically manhandle that back into place and put a tack in with my leather gloves, just quickly to get it in place before it gets hot, and then I'll get my glove out of the way. We can put our earth clamp straight on that plate now. And no problems. You'll notice, guys, I already cleaned up where I'm going to weld, took the primer off, put a bit too much off. Here, guys, the doctor, as he always often does, he gets out of control sometimes. Usually it's always in a good way. Now I'm going to get some airflow, and we'll get this welded on in earnest. You saw me stop there sometimes, guys. When we're talking about the thin end of some box, okay, this is a 2.5 wall box versus a 5mm thick plate. I've got to be careful I don't blow into that box. So I know, guys, after years, when to stop and let it cool down a little bit before I keep running. If I kept that on there and tried to keep it on, I guarantee I would have blown through that box. And guys, that is it. We're not going to put any in the sides, otherwise they will interfere with the bolt nut or the bolt head. So we don't weld the sides, just the top and the bottom, and that is enough to hold that on, guys. That's how we get that on, done and dusted. Okay, we're going to set this aside now because we need to set up our traction loss plate with its plate. But let's just make note of how this is welded on upright. Now, if you remember, there was 2 holes in the plate that were in close proximity to each other. So that has to sit that way, okay? So when we put it on our traction loss plate, we have to be mindful when we weld this on guys, that we actually welded on to those same locations. Okay, let's talk about our rear traction loss axle and the coupling we need to build, guys, to get this successfully coupled on to our traction loss axle. All right, this is the setup, guys. This is how this is going to be done. All right, let me take you through this step by step. Your 40 by 40 by 3 mil box that I said to get 1 metre of, you will cut a 40 millimetre length off your 200 millimetres remaining. Okay, make sure you cut it nice and square, okay, because this has to sit on the plate, and it has to sit nice and square on the plate, and then it has to sit nice and square on your axle. All right, take your plate, measure your halfway marks in the width and the length, and then get a line drawn in on those guys so you can find the center. You'll be prepping the box that you cut, your 40 millimetre in length, 40 by 40 by 3 mil, and you'll be putting a chamfer around the edge, guys, okay? You're putting a slight chamfer in this, so then when this is put on the plate and when it's put on the axle, it's got some space, it's got a little V to get weld into, okay? This has to be a strong weld that's holding the plate to our axle, so we're going to chamfer both sides. So then where it welds onto the axle and where it welds onto the plate, it's a good strong weld. And then you're just going to put that right in the center of your X marks the spot. You'll lie this over, guys, and you'll be able to do this by eye. You'll get it in the center. We're going to clamp this so it can't move. So once you've got that pretty much in the ballpark, guys, and you can do some measurements right around to get it. So the doc's got a pretty good eye, you know. Let's see what it's like this way. Ha ha ha! What a champion. Rightio. So the last thing to do is we don't want it twisted, so let's make sure it's also square. Yep, beautiful. Right, so that's about where we need it. In fact, that's not where we need it, that's plumb. It's not about, it's plumb. So I'm going to use this clamp, guys, to clamp this. And guess what? Oh, you dirty, dirty dog. Anyway, I did tell you this is what happens. As soon as you put a clamp on, everything will move. That's just what happens, guys. So now I'll go through the whole process again. First thing to do is to get it square. And that's still pretty good. This is still pretty good. It's not going to be quite right because it moves significantly. So I'm just going to make my measurements each side. And this is how you'll need to fine tune this. It's not square now as well, which is bloody annoying. And this is what you'll do, guys, to get this centered. And straight. Beautiful. Lovely. Right, so that's what we'll do to get that in the center of our plate here. We're going to weld this on now, guys, in earnest. I'll just get my camera out of the way here. Get that tack, guys, and then we'll run our beads. Now that's tack, guys, I'm just going to double check, all right. It's really important that this is square, okay? Because if it's not square with our plate, when we put it on, our traction loss axle is going to be cocked. And that would be really annoying, all right? So take your time after you've tacked it and make sure that it's square before you really get the weld into it. And we're good to go. So while this cools down, guys, let's move this out of the way. So we've got our 800mm piece of traction loss 40 by 40 by 3 mil axle here, okay? Now we need to find the centre of this, so then we can couple that bad boy onto this guy, all right? So we know that is going to be 400mm. If you've got yours cut exactly at 800, 400 is going to be your centre, okay? So happy days. I am going to scribe this in though, because that texture mark is going to be too easy to lose when I clean my primer. I need to clean my primer up from around this. So it's nice and clean when I weld that 40mm by 40mm box on its plate back onto here, right? So we'll get that done now. Now this is going to be pretty warm still, I would imagine. I need to clean this up and de-bead it before I weld it on here, because otherwise it's going to be pretty hard to get that. I'll be able to get it with a file. So once this goes on like this, guys, it's going to be a little bit tricky to get that stuff off from underneath. You won't get a grinder in, it'll have to be done with a file, but that's fine. That can be done no problemo. But before I do that, I'll get the flux off this, the flux capacitor. And I'll get some of those beads off now. And there's the battery charged. Now what we'll do, guys, we're going to mark the halfway mark on our 20mm piece here, both sides, on our 40mm should I say, guys, so halfway is going to be 20. We'll mark it both sides, so then we can line those 20mm marks up with our line here, so this is dead in the centre, if you get my drift. Look, it's just a lot of fun. Whew, that's still pretty warm. Okay, get those marked. We'll get this aligned. Then we'll get it clamped and it'll all go out of place, of course. Now, actually, guys, before we put this on, it's something important we need to do. We need to make sure we've got this around the right way, so then when it couples with this guy, those close in proximity holes line up at the top, because the close in proximity holes are in the top of this one. So we've just got to keep that in mind. I mean, we can just swivel this around. So, yep, that's going to be the way that goes. Yep, always good, guys, and sensible just to double check that stuff, all right? Because that's the sort of stuff that you just go, oh my gosh, once you get it all welded on, and, you know, out comes the cutting disc, out comes the colourful language, and everything gets cut off again and relined up properly the second time, instead of just doing it right the first time. Okay. Let's make sure he's square. So as well as it being lined up in the centre on our 2 centre marks, let's make sure it's square. Okay, get a clamp on. Okay, now that didn't look to really move much, but I'm going to double check everything. Beautiful. Beautiful. And just make sure that it's got the same overhang, that it's lining up on each side here. Then you're going to be sweet. I'm going to get some air going again. This is where a wire brush, guys, is going to be your go-to. It's going to be hard to get that drill with the wire brush on the drill under here. So that's now tacked into position. Let's just have a very quick double check. And that, guys, is fantastic, right? That's going to allow us to tweak. That's going to allow us to tweak the height of our traction loss axle and casters in relation to our front pivot caster if we're finding it hard to get the mid-frame level. So I'm going to weld this off now, guys, and that will be it. So, guys, that's going to be it for today's tutorial. Thanks for tuning in. Until the next tutorial, guys, stay safe, stay healthy, and take it easy out there.